Alright. So one of the community members here who watched my videos asked if I could showcase the tree farm or the wood farm. So I thought, yeah, well, I can do that, but I can also enhance it a bit and show a little bit more, basically just how my entire island looks like, how I built it, and I tried to optimize it as much as possible. And I guess we'll just go through one by one. So first off, the wood farm. It looks quite complicated, but this kind of like entire section here, minus the drill here in the middle, is the entire wood farm. The drill just got in the way because this is a gold deposit, and it was pretty close, so I kept it. And I guess before we start, worth mentioning, you need oil, because otherwise you cannot set up the sapling automatic planters. And I'm actually using petrified oil, even though it doesn't quite look like it connects to that everywhere, but if you pay close attention you can see it's always a yellow pipe, at least for the input of these planters, which obviously speeds it up a little bit. And basically these are just 12 copies or 11 copies of the same setup over and over again. And within the sapling automatic planter you can just insert whatever three trees that you like, so I can just take them out and I can, for instance, farm for pine sapling. There's one little hiccup. The problem is if this tree is being chopped down, it means that the sapling automatic planter, so it goes through here and it then gets split through here, as you can see. And if at that very moment I teleport away, I disconnect or whatever before it's either inside the chest here or well, it's not really being put into the chest, but basically traveling around, when you disconnect or whatever, you obviously lose that sapling. So you have to consider that you kind of like, when you keep rejoining, that eventually you have to fill those up again because it just keeps losing some of these saplings over and over again. But anyways, it's pretty simple. I guess we're just not going to take this example, but instead we're going to take, I believe, let's try this example. This is a bit more clear. So, well, this present here is in the way, but whatever. So you need an industrial lumber mill, obviously, right here at this very specific location. You need to plant your tree, which usually requires grass or something like that. Otherwise you cannot really plant the tree there. It's possible that there's some kind of like event trees and stuff. These, I don't know whether they even work or how they work, but generally it's the same idea over and over again. You just need an industrial lumber mill, and right next to it the sapling automatic planter, set up like this, so it keeps planting it and the lumber mill keeps taking it away, basically. So that's kind of like how it works. And essentially what it does, it outputs everything to the same side. Then I have this filter conveyor. Left side is the wood, right side is the sapling. Let's go through. Generally you could set up a second tree kind of farm here. Just keep remembering that in case you swap out the three saplings here, that you will also have to potentially change your filter. But straightforward, the wood goes to the left, the saplings back to the right, and back into the sapling automatic planter, so it keeps refilling itself over and over again. So that kind of stuff is completely automatic with the trees or with the saplings. And the wood is going to the left, it's going to a chest, so if I want I can just take the wood directly. If not, I can just fill it up, or I can get rid of the chest. And in case it is full, it's going to be forwarded to the sawmill, and essentially the sawmill obviously just makes them into planks. So that's pretty straightforward. This is really literally just a copy-paste 12 times, because one of these oil deposits manages to provide for 12 farms. So that's why I set it up that way. If you do the calculations all through and through, considering they change the timings, you are able to provide with one single oil refinery, or I think it's two, maybe even, yeah, it's two actually, it's two. But it's one oil deposit. As you can see, it's connected to this one single oil deposit. So this is kind of like the input, as you can see. I described it as tree farm input. So whenever this oil deposit disappears, I just get rid of all of these pipes, and I connect the new one with the new pipes into this again, and it's going to be just backup firing again. So two oil refineries, one on the left, one on the right. Two farms basically, here on the left one on the right one, and that copy pasted in a total of 12 times. So that's kind of like how the tree farm works for me, or the wood farm works for me. And well, it was pretty handy. I must say it was doing its job really well, because wood is actually something that you need for a lot of things, so it really comes in handy when you have that. You can also sell them for a pretty good price usually, so it's both good for having the item and obviously selling these as well. Then last time I've already shown off this kind of like red bronze refinery farm combined with the plates, with the presses to get the different kind of copper items, I guess. So I have these 3 presses here set up, and I have actually modified this kind of farm that every like 4th copper ingot is gonna go pass through this way, and I can explain to you why I actually want every 4th copper piece or copper ingot passed along this way, and how this just magically fits up perfectly well because it's 3 presses with 3 different items. So we have the rods, we have the bolts, and we have the plates. We don't really need the regular ingots, and if so, we can just take some of these out of this chest. I have actually added here a 5-second timer because I realized the smelter is a bit too fast, and kind of like just delaying it a bit. It kind of like makes this petrified speed up drill a bit pointless, but that's just what I've done. And in case you haven't seen it, the setup is below it. I've shown it in the last video, and I actually want to take this opportunity to explain that there is actually a small little detail that you need to worry about, and that's that you actually provide enough power to these let's say the first kind of conveyor sensor, that it actually manages to provide enough power to even power up the split conveyors. So I'm just going to show that off real quick. So here it should eventually, it's 12 power, which is more than enough that it manages to store this 3 power to even be able to power up the split conveyor. If it's not, I believe the minimum requirement is 9 power that you need to pass through here. If you don't pass through 9 power at a minimum, then you won't be actually able to keep this split conveyor powered up consistently. And it just does it once and it doesn't store enough power here. You require at least 3 power, otherwise it's not going to work. So make sure the pass through here is at least 9 power that you can do. So in other words, you actually have to input at least, I believe I think it's 6 power that you have to output, I'm not quite sure. But the input should be at a minimum 9 power. I can show you that later why. Otherwise it's not going to really be powered up, because I figured that out in the steel farm. And the last one here, the pass through that one here, that one actually doesn't really matter too much somehow, but somehow it does, which is a bit confusing. I believe it kind of like matters how you've chained it up. In my case it was perfectly fitting well, I didn't have to do much magic. But when we go over to the steel farm, when I just quickly want to show you that. So we're going back over to the steel farm, which I have now finally automated more with split conveyors to output steel or iron ingots along every single section. It looks very, very confusing, I know, but basically here, as you can see, one of them is passing through 9 power and the other one 6 power, and it's usually always this first one is the input for this kind of like the first regular sensor that's being tested, and the second one is actually going to be passed through the second sensor right after the split conveyors. And that's kind of like how I set up. It kind of had to be exactly 9 and exactly 6, otherwise it wasn't working. So I had to actually provide here 60 and 40 to make that work properly. And for this amount of split conveyors, you need exactly 7 of these to power up 8 different steel mills. And in that case, I actually also needed 2 steam generators, otherwise it wasn't enough, because I need a total of 14 power sources here. So these 2 are not connected, but whatever. But yeah, basically you need 2 steam generators, otherwise you're not going to be able to power up all the sensors with enough power to power up the split conveyors with enough power. But essentially the setup here is exactly the same. The only difference is that if you just take a look at these 6 components here, or 5 components here, it only connects to a single split conveyor, as opposed to my copper farm, which has like 3 in a row connected, and then kind of like, you know, it does it a little differently. The difference is basically that I kind of like want every 4th copper ingot being passed through over here, and here I kind of like want it spread out evenly everywhere every time, so it keeps changing every time. So once it hits this one, you'll see it changes, then the next one hits it again, it changes again, and so on and so on. It does that for every single one. Obviously, I could have set it up the exact same way as I did for the copper farm over there, but that kind of like didn't really matter. And below, it's pretty straightforward. That's just 8 lines of steel mills attached. 3 of them have presses with the different kind of like molds, with the rod mold, with the bolt mold, and with the plate mold. And obviously, if you wanted to, I can actually change the amounts of how many kind of like steel ingots I want here and stuff. But essentially, that's kind of like the goal. This farm here I have set up seems to be perfectly fine to power up each steel mill evenly without losing any iron ingot, meaning I will not run into the item limit that quickly. So that's kind of like handy. This is still messed up at the moment because I was setting it up actually in the same session that I'm like recording right now, so it's obviously overfilling a bit. But if you take a look at this one, it has no overflow of iron ingots, it's still powered up, it has one inside, and it has nothing in the queue. It's just copper, coal, because yeah, coal is kind of like, that's another topic to talk about. If you take all the calculations, you'll figure out that it's kind of like impossible to power up a steel mill without wasting coal. It's pretty much almost impossible. But yeah, that's kind of like the main setups that I have. And if you go back to the copper farm here again, or the gold copper farm and the red bronze refinery, so obviously this red bronze refinery connects to every single copper or gold deposit that I have. So I have one here, I have one over here, I have one down here, and I have another one back there. And this one is a copper one, this one is a copper one, this one a gold one, and this one a gold one. And if you do the calculations properly, you get a single gold ore every 2 minutes, and you get copper ore every 5 seconds. So that means essentially every 2 minutes you are able to produce one red bronze ingot, because you need 2 gold and 30 coppers. But within those 2 minutes you only get up to, I believe it's 24 copper ingots from a single copper deposit, so you need to attach the second copper deposit as well, and that's kind of like why I want every 4th copper ingot to be passed along this way to make this even out again once properly perfect. It's kind of like messed up at the moment a bit, because again this kind of like was a bit a quick fix sort of, and these 3 farms here are powered up with petrified oil, while this one kind of is, but delayed via chest, so I'm kind of like overflowing still a bit, and I kind of like have to manage that later on. But that's kind of like the kind of goal that I have. Again, once again, considering they really don't just change the timers of these deposits. Considering they already did, I missed it and I have to correct it again, but that's kind of like the idea. And well, the fruit farms here, they're pretty obvious, just making crates, big crates. I can get them and I can sell them for a huge amount of price. I'm just upgrading them, pretty straightforward. It's nothing complicated really, it's just I'm trying to get fertilizer on everything. That's a lot of fish that you need to farm, obviously. I'm upgrading all the totems as evenly as possible as I can, which requires a lot of grinding as well, obviously. So I'm kind of just like, when I feel like it's gonna grind. Then I have these sprinklers, which make all these patches here watered, which powers it up even further. And I figured that 6 of these water catchers was perfectly fine on top of these glass boxes, so it kind of like see-through a little bit, to make these last indefinitely. So that's kind of like what I did for everything. So here's the pumpkin, here's the radish, and eventually here we have the starfruit farm as well. And in case I ever need iron or crystallized iron, I can just go through here. I know there's better ways to do that, but it kind of worked out for me every time, so I kept that like it is. And that's kind of like pretty much everything that I have. And over here I just have my tree farm, we have the chili pepper farm, and that's really about everything that I have, because I figured I don't really need anything else than that. Otherwise I'm running into too many issues that too many items are running around the conveyors, and I kind of like wanted to avoid that. Obviously you can try to kind of fix this a bit also with the coal, but it's going to be really complicated, because the coal is generated every 30 seconds and the steel mill, I believe, needs to be, I don't know, powered up. It is powered up by one coal for 31 seconds, even though it says it's 30 seconds, it's like 31 seconds, and that's the problem. While why coal eventually is overflowing and makes it pretty difficult to even this out properly for pretty much any farm they have that requires coal. And that's about everything. Obviously, I could even now with this kind of setup with the split conveyors power up or like profit more from the petrified oil refineries, and that's really, I believe, kind of like it. Oh yeah, in case you wondered, the second oil deposit is connected right in here for the petrifiers that are responsible for the gold deposits and the copper deposits. I believe that's about it. I mean, if you have any questions, if you want details, if it's too confusing, I'll try to explain in the commentaries. It took a lot of time for me to really figure out how it kind of works. I still didn't quite get through it, how it works. I believe it's broken even that it's kind of like storing these. I do understand how the gates work, but I still do believe that they're kind of broken-ish somehow in a bit. Kind of like how the power is being passed along through these lines and how it actually eventually just holds this power up here is a bit confusing, and I believe it's actually bugged. So don't get me wrong, it might get fixed. And in fact, this could potentially even be an infinite power source if you set it up properly. But, you know, that's another topic as well. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Obviously, not everything is perfect, but it's better than what I had before. And once again, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments and have fun.